Any further, we have been told by residents that there have been some sound issues and sound quality issues with the microphones. So for this meeting, when speaking, councillors will remain seated unless they want to stand up and lean into the microphone. So we'll move on from there. In attendance, we have a full attendance of council here with Councillor Fechner, Councillor Doyle, Councillor Tully, Councillor Johnnick, Councillor Ireland, Councillor Milligan and Councillor Consman and Councillor Madsen. I'm getting over that tan jacket. So we'll start off first by acknowledgement of country. Councillor Consman.
Ipswich City Council respectfully acknowledges the traditional owners as custodians of the land upon which we meet. We pay our respects to their elders, past, present and emerging, as the keepers of the traditions, cultures and stories of a proud people.
Thank you, Councillor Consman. We'll now move to the opening prayer. Councillor Doyle.
Heavenly Father, grant that we who seek to serve you in the affairs of this council may have wisdom in our deliberations, the guiding of your hand in our works, and the grace to serve together to advance the prosperity of our city. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Councillor Doyle. We'll move on to apologies. There are no apologies. And are there any leaves of absences anyone like to table? No? We'll then move on to any declarations of interest. The council have got the packs there. Are there any declarations of interest? Councillor Johnnick.
In accordance with Section 175E of the Local Government Act 2009, I declare that I have or may have a conflict of interest in item number 11, titled Remondis Deed of Settlement and Variation, as I have brothers employed by that company.
So you have a brother or brothers?
I have two brothers employed by Remondis in different fields. So I propose to deal with this matter by leaving the meeting while the matter is discussed and voted on.
Thank you very much, Councillor Johnnick. We'll now move on to the officers' report and item F1, the procurement, the council procurement reform. The recommendation is that council note the objectives and outcomes intended by Business Transformation Project 3, Procurement, that the work that has been completed is still underway to transform council's vital procurement model and function. May I have a mover for that motion, please?
I'm ready.
Councillor Kutzler has moved that. May I call for the relevant council officer to approach the lectern to do the briefing? We may have two, is that right, or one?
It may be a tag team.
Thank you.
If that's okay.
Just say your name and title.
Of course. So Sonia Cooper, General Manager of Corporate Services with Council. So if I could make some remarks about the report that's before Council today, and I may then invite Richard White as the Manager of Procurement to come and add any particular points, and certainly we're both available to answer any questions in relation to this particular report. So the purpose, as is indicated in the report, is to provide the Council with an overview and an update on the significant reform that has commenced and is underway and will continue into the future in relation to Council's procurement function. So the procurement function in Council was the subject of one of the 18 business transformation projects, as the report indicates, that were led by the Interim Management Committee under the lead of the Interim Administrator. So BTP, as we call it, Business Transformation Program number 3, focused on procurement. And the report sets out the clear objectives and intended outcomes of that transformation of our procurement function. Procurement is a vital function, needless to say, in Ipswich City Council. There are more than 500 contracts currently across Council's functions, and those contracts have a great deal of importance in the way in which Council serves the ratepayers of Ipswich. So there was a need borne out through this transformation to focus on improving the governance, the strategic direction setting and value delivery of procurement function in Council. It was intended to deliver an improved, more efficient, more effective procurement framework to achieve greater consistency and control in the procurement activities across council. In the past, it was delivered with a small central team and then officers embedded in departments, which, while it has its strengths, is not as strong as what we are implementing at the moment with the procurement model, which is a fully centralised procurement function. By centralising, we're able to consolidate to ensure consistency and contemporary and strong practice when it comes to the way in which we're procuring, the controls in place about contract administration, and ensuring that we are making sound decisions, once again, in this very important function. So the procurement model was endorsed last year. A new manager of procurement, Richard White, was appointed in October. And since that time, Richard has been leading and managing the implementation of the new procurement model. And there has been a range of achievements, including setting a new procurement administrative directive, a new code of practice. There's been a reshaping of the team and a number of roles out to market in order to bring in, to complement the existing capability, bring in significant number of new staff with great skills and experience and capability in procurement so that we can continue the implementation of the new procurement model into the future. So it's fair to say that we've got a lot of work ahead of us, and that while progress is sound to date, our goal is that by December of this year we will have a sound and ideally well-functioning procurement function. But in the course of implementing the model, there's been a great deal of work to consolidate the contracts, to gather up information on the various procurement arrangements that are in place. And in the course of that, we've uncovered a range of contracts that are requiring urgent attention, hence the number of reports that are on the agenda for Council today. A number of reports that are requiring consideration and relatively urgent decision making in a range of areas, a range of contracts that exist in Council. We don't expect that this will be the last of those. We're working systematically to address the range of contracts that are expiring and due to expire in the coming months. So we wanted to provide that overview of where the procurement function is at. We, as I said, have a lot of work to do, a lot of capability to build, a lot of work to do with our partner departments, and we have ambition to deliver a vastly improved procurement function for the Ipswich community into the future, and hence proposing in the next item, and I shouldn't jump to that, a new, revised approach to local procurement. So on that, I'll rest.
Thank you very much, Ms. Cooper. I want to thank you and Mr. White for your diligence in the work that you are doing, so thank you very much. Obviously, the previous council was dismissed due to poor governance, and from what I can see, the interim administrator and the interim management committee set up this transformation program to address procurement and the poor governance. May I ask you, Ms. Cooper, what are some of the governance issues that you've addressed to date so far in this project?
Some of the issues that we've addressed and will continue to need to address and reinforce are really just ensuring that we have effective forward plans for procurement activity into the future, that we are ensuring that there is sufficient lead time in establishing that forward plan to properly determine a procurement plan, to allow ourselves the time to decide whether or not a matter, and to ask for Council's consideration as to whether a matter goes to the open market and whether tenders are invited. There's been a tendency or a practice for matters not to be well planned and executed, left until rather too late in the process in order for sound governance and decision making to be applied. There's been a lack of clarity in delegations, a very serious issue in relation to people understanding the existing legislative delegations and sub-delegations that exist in relation to the execution of contracts, the signing of contracts, and probably more to the point, the extension of contracts, and what are the appropriate delegations that should be enacted there. So we have seen in the departments in years gone by that you'll have officers that are relatively junior officers in the scheme of things that are extending contracts when in fact that's been the practice that's been in place. It's been allowed, it's been condoned by leaders in the past, by not just one or two officers, but by a number of officers, where those officers are signing letters extending contracts or purporting to extend contracts where they don't actually have the financial or legislative delegation to do so because of the value of the contract or the length of the contract. So they are some of the key issues that we're seeking to address with, as I mentioned, the new administrative directive, the new code of practice, procedure, and we have more work to do in the clarity of the delegations. There's been a lot of work done in revising and communicating the proper legislative sub-delegations, but something that we need to do more communicating on. So there's some of the key areas.
Okay. I note that the Business Transformation Project 3 had 6 objectives. I'll just run through those, Ms Cooper. The first was develop a simple and efficient procurement framework that focuses on governance and transparency. Has that been completed, or when will we expect it to be completed?
The framework has been completed, as in the administrative directive, the code of practice and procedure. So that they're the core elements of the framework. We mention, in terms of work that's on our agenda, a contract management framework. That's an important supplement to that. But in terms of the core, we have that. And with the revised procurement policy that's on the agenda today as well, that's obviously a very important part as well.
Thank you. The second objective was provide a framework that meets the needs of staff and the organisation. Where are we with that?
We have made progress in that, but the work that we need to do to complete the staffing of the branch is very important there, because at the moment we have a significant number of vacancies in the branch, which means that we're really not able to deliver on as timely a basis. We're working very hard and obviously prioritising within that, but it is and has been putting a lot of pressure on the team to deliver the service and the standard that we have to deliver through this transformation. So the framework is there, but we really need to recruit and appoint these resources, which is urgently underway, in order that we can deliver.
Okay. Thank you. And the third one was provide a framework that entrenches a consistent message.
Well advanced, but I would still say that we have more work to do, and I guess that goes back to the communication that I've referenced. Richard White, as the manager, has implemented some regular and effective messaging across the workforce, and has been meeting with general managers in their teams, reinforcing. He's been working very heavily with his own team, reinforcing the message. But as we know, with big change like this, big transformation, there's a need for an awful lot of communication and constant messaging. It's a big workforce, and the practices that we're seeking to change were very entrenched. So it is taking solid effort, and yet more solid effort, to get that consistent message. So Richard and I have a lot of work to do to build on the communication foundations, I guess, that have been established.
The other objective was provide a framework that meets compliance with relevant legislation and ensures risk is escalated where appropriate. Is that?
Yes, I believe that it dovetails back to the reference to the administrative directive, the revised policy and code of practice procedure, hand in hand with those delegations, and ensuring that we are appropriately discharging the delegations in the
The next one might be partly answered with the next item on our agenda, but increase the confidence of suppliers, providers and ratepayers in Ipswich City Council's procurement practices.
Yeah, absolutely. I think all of the activity to date, but once again, much more to come. And as we know, the proof is in the pudding. So certainly, it's our goal that we will see an improvement, and I'm confident that we will see an improvement in turn of the confidence of suppliers, providers, and ratepayers. As well as the internal focus that Richard has had on the team and with general managers, and the focus that I've had myself, where certainly once we've got these foundations in place, we will be reaching out to stakeholders more broadly, which we've begun, but certainly more to do in terms of communicating that it's going to be different going forward in doing business with council, and we're really keen to open up opportunities.
Okay. Thank you. And finally, mitigate the risk of fraud, corruption and non-compliance. How is that
Certainly, I think once again the foundations that we have largely got in place but need to consolidate and communicate will assist us significantly in mitigating this risk. Certainly, that's I think one of the foundations of the centralisation is to really tighten up the controls so we can get the procurement function absolutely well under control and have far greater scrutiny of the decisions that are being made by centralising everything above $2,000, which is to be implemented in its final stage from the 2nd of August. This year, we will have far greater control, and those internal controls are a key. They're not the only thing, but they're a key tool in minimising fraud and corruption activity, hand in hand with the capability building that we need to do and have begun, and with the increased communication and vigilance by all that we're doing the right thing when it comes to procurement.
I'll note that this is just questions for Ms Cooper, not discussion that we'll have afterwards. Are there any questions from the councillors on the Business Transformation Project number 3, procurement? Yeah, Councillor Fechner.
Just specifically to communicating with individuals and businesses that want to engage with council. You made mention of communicating that to them. Are there any plans of running workshops to help people understand how our procurement works moving forward? And have we identified any key stakeholders that we'd like to invite in the first instance, I guess? And what is the timeline for rolling that out to help the wider community and our business community understand how to do business with the council?
To be frank, that work is beginning. There's much more to do, but in connection with the work that's been done on a new by Ipswich approach, in line with the direction from council, we have begun to engage with local chambers and will work hand in hand with our counterparts in the Community, Cultural and Economic Development Department to engage with local business and industry, and to ensure that the practices and the procurement methods we use are, meeting the needs, they're user-friendly, supporting and explaining how businesses can work with council going forward. So we'll be reaching out in a number of ways to do that, and in fact, the State Government Department has reached out to Ipswich City Council in recent weeks to see whether or not we'd like to be involved in a pilot for a small business-friendly council, and our General Manager in CCED is keen to do so, so we're responding to that. So I think by joining up across council and hopefully with State Government as well, we can really get some great engagement and sharing of information with local industry here. Business.
Are there any other questions? I guess just a final one from me, Ms Cooper. Do you have all the resources and the staffing that you need to bring out all the objectives that we need for the procurement policies, frameworks?
There has been a significant redirection of council resources to into the coming financial year in the proposed work on the budget for the coming financial year that has enabled us to bring in the resourcing and the capability that we need. So if we do as we should and fill those roles with the right kinds of expertise and build the capability and knowledge of the team that we have in place, we should have the resources that we need to deliver, and that is our intent.
Wonderful. Thank you. If there's no other questions, just to step down. Thank you very much, Ms Cooper.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'll now open it up for discussion. I guess from my perspective, from a procurement perspective, we spend about over $100 million worth of ratepayers' money on procurement. I see the procurement activities and the procurement functions of our council to be absolutely vital for us to deliver the goods and services that the good citizens of Ipswich require. It's a vitally important function. It's also very important in regards to providing jobs and as well as providing business for local businesses as well. So I acknowledge that, Ms Cooper and Mr White, you have a large task ahead of you that you've been working very hard in the past, and letting you know how important I think the work that you're doing and how important it is for your team to be functioning at a high level. Thank you. No other discussion points?
Yeah,
Yes, Councillor
I
Fittner.
just want to acknowledge the difficulties that exist in rolling out a transformation project like this in such a huge organisation. I know that Sonia touched on it earlier, but it can't be understated that centralising procurement within an organisation that has historically, had a model that was departmental led, it means it puts a lot of pressures on the people who work in our organisation and within the Ipswich City Council, and I know that and acknowledge that it must be difficult to have this change thrust upon you. But in the spirit of moving forward and in the new council, I wholeheartedly acknowledge that it's such important work and it's tough now, and yes, we're going to a centre-led model and we might find better ways of doing it in the future, as we've heard from Sonia in the past, but the work that's being done now means that we do get to work towards goals like being a business-friendly council, and that's something that I'm quite personally very passionate about. And I know that Sonia's team has one or two things on that list that makes us a business-friendly council that we can immediately tick off. So if we're working towards something like that, it can only mean good things for our community moving forward. So I just want to acknowledge how difficult it must be for everyone in the organisation to be going through such a huge transformation project, but change is always difficult, and we've got to move forward.
Thank you, Councillor Fichtner. If there's no other discussion, Councillor Queensland did move the motion. May I ask for a seconder? Deputy Mayor Marnie Doyle. All those in favour of the recommendation, please raise your hand. I note that it's been unanimous. Thank you. We'll now move on to F2. Which is the Buy Ipswich approach. The recommendation is that the policy titled Procurement Policy be amended as outlined in Attachment 1 by incorporating significant strengthening of support for local businesses and industry, including a new Buy Ipswich approach. May I please have a mover for that? Councillor Fichtner.
I'll move that.
I'll now ask for the relevant council officer to come to the lectern to discuss Buy Ipswich. State your name and your position.
Richard White, Manager of Procurement.
Thank you, Mr White. Would you like to outline the Buy Ipswich approach as in our papers, Mr O'Prey?
So one of the key tenets within the local government legislation and regulations is ensuring that procurement matters within council support both local business and industry. In the past, this has been considered within our procurement policy, but we haven't made moves within our framework or our procedures to strengthen and provide practical ways to implement that. What we're seeing today is what we're presenting with the Buy Ipswich approach is a practical approach to implementing a support for local business and industry. It's a three-tiered system that we've designed to ensure it's clear to understand for both internal stakeholders as well as business and industry when they're applying. It's the rollout of this work. It's the first step, And as alluded, there's a lot of work that has to happen after this with regards to workshops and support, direct support, so that the community understands what this means. On the high level, it takes 3 steps. The first being that in future, so from the 1st of July if adopted, all procurement matters under $50,000 that require a quote will go to Ipswich Business and Industry first. So they would be where we can have the quotes, available quotes in the market, we would go to only Ipswich Business and Industry. So that's a policy that is growing in strength and is getting accepted more around Queensland, Australia. We're taking this step to help us strengthen and support and be really clear and direct with business in Ipswich that we're supporting them. Number 2 would be that where its quotes are sought, under 200,000, a weighting of 20% is given to local business and industry. Without going into the step-by-steps, which we'll publish.
It's in the papers, yes.
It's in the papers, that we break out exactly how that would be implemented. So how we support a business that is native to this region, that has branch offices in this region, that's in a surrounding region, that's in Queensland, Australia, and so on. They all get very clear differentiation and weightings within the policy. Thirdly, for those contracts that we seek, which would be over 200,000, tenders are required. When we tender, we would be providing a 15% to local economy support. So in that case, we are looking at how much they're spending in council's region. We'll be assessing that in the tender forms, asking for information for where the money is being spent. In the first instance, we are applying that over 30% of the contract is spent locally, and that would receive the full weighting of 15%. Then grades down to 0. So again, this and all 3 of these are our first step, and we're implementing these with a 12-month timer on them, so that we can come back to Mayor and Council in the next 12 months to say how this has worked and where we might need to make changes or raise or lower limits. So that's about that.
Thank you, Mr. White. And thank you for your work on this policy too. Are there any questions of Mr. White? No. I have a couple. My understanding, the previous policy was a 5% local, and it wasn't always applied, or
I would say
please correct
unwritten
me.
policy, if that's a way of describing it.
How did you describe it?
Unwritten policy.
Unwritten
So
policy,
it was it wasn't in our policy or procedure documents, but the considered weighting was 5%, and again that wasn't usually published. It was published as a local content. We didn't say whether it was 5%, 10%, 15 or 20. That's also not to say that in some cases that might have been higher than 5%, but also in some cases 0% was applied.
Okay. Whereas if it's 50,000 or less, it goes to Ipswich Business exclusively and doesn't go out on the set. And if it's less than 200,000, there's now a 20%.
20% weighting
on Ipswich businesses here. Yeah. What have you done any consultation with with the Ipswich Chamber of Commerce and the Greater Springfield Chamber of Commerce on this?
Yep. So we met with the Ipswich Region Chamber of Commerce on Monday. They're very supportive of this approach and appreciative of the steps we're taking to strengthen our support for business and industry. We invited the Greater Springfield Chamber of Commerce to that meeting. They were sadly unable to attend. I'm going to be providing briefing to them later, but again, they were generally supportive from what they could see. So we're following that up. They're actually, I would say, very supportive and keen to work with us to how we roll that out, how we support and what they can do to help us roll it out. And again, talking to Councillor Fechner's reference to workshops and what they can supply to help us do that.
Councillor Fechner.
Transformation projects are always about growing up and catching up, I guess. Where do we stand with this by Ipswich approach in terms of other local government areas in Queensland? Are we hitting the mark, doing exactly what everyone else is doing? Are we erring on the side of best practice?
I'd say, yeah, thank you, Councillor Fechner. It's erring on the side of best practice for this, although many councils don't have a clearly stated policy. It is legislative that we need to, all councils need to support local business and industry, and it's left to the council to decide how to do that. Doing a market scan, they're all applying it differently. There was definitely no consistent approach to how that was doing, and all weighting differently. So some very heavy just on direct support, some more on how to spend, and some on direct weightings. So I think what we have implemented here, or hoping to implement if adopted, would be a fair and balanced across all three of those types of weightings. And again, really need to see after 12 months how this is going. If everyone's meeting the 30%, do we need to raise the bar and consider spending more locally and supporting that? So this is really our first step, and see where we are in 12 months' time.
Councillor
And I
Fickle?
guess it is important to note that the size of the local government area determines on the procurement that the local procurement that happens within it as well. In terms of explaining that to the players at home, I guess.
Yeah, 100%. So we're not seeking to disadvantage council, however, with this policy. The wording where it says where a competitive market exists, so we need to ensure that we're still driving value for council, and that we're getting capable and experienced providers that can deliver services for us. This is more about helping and supporting and ensuring that we include, because in the past and in consultation with businesses in the market, that was one of their key interests, was how do they get included and make sure that they are at least given an option to supply to council. So part of the policy is ensuring that, and the second part, that once we're looking at them with a weighting and support. So you're 100% right. This won't mean that we're only engaging with local business, and it'll still be driving value for money.
Thank you. Councillor Johnick?
I just wanted to say, I know that you've got a lot of things and changes happening in your department, and then adding this extra layer of buying local, buying Ipswich, is not an easy feat. So I thank you so much for all your efforts moving forward. And I just wanted to note how important it is for us to start here and grow something locally to buy Ipswich, so that our economy can thrive, so that we can support local businesses and local jobs, and we can become sustainable, especially during recent economic times. So thank you very much.
That's great. And thank you, Councillor Johnick. I actually think this is also the ideal time to do this work. While it means many late nights, it's standardising and centralising, and Sonia spoke to this. Standardising and centralising actually allows me to enforce this, so rigidly but consistently, where council policies, while we talk to the 5%, council policies previously being decentralised couldn't be consistently approved and implemented. So this is our perfect time with us fully centralising in one branch that we can enforce and ensure that this grows for our community.
Mr White, during a pre-briefing on this, I know you don't have perfect spend data, but you mentioned to us that looking at spend data from the 1st of January 2019 to the 31st of April 2020, our local spend locally was 17.21%, government being 4.31%, non-local being 76.52%, and utilities on 1.96%.
That's correct. So that's quite low. And
17.21%, yes.
Quite low, yeah. Considering the number of services that we utilise locally, that will probably utilise local trades and materials, I would say to that number as well, there's a couple of large-scale projects that are happening within Ipswich at the moment that would be 100% recorded as non-local, even if they're using local materials and local subcontractors.
Is that like the CBD redevelopment?
Yeah, okay. Things like that would take big chunks of that 71%. I think it's actually going to be a really great having that number, while we don't have excellent spend data to date, it's a clear indicator that we can also use to track how we improve on this policy. So I take it as it's a harsh number to look at, but it's something that we're going to grow and work with in the future as well. How we best cover that over contracts over 200,000, how I track the amount of spend that's done locally in that contract. If we get the 30% before, I know markets that are more sophisticated than us at the moment, and procurement teams that are in a future state to us at the moment, in defence and federal government, are very good at tracking how the spend happens as well, and how local economies are supported by their contracts. So we want to get there as well. It's just going to take us a little time.
Thank you, Mr. White. Are there any other questions, Mr. White? Thank you very much, and thank you very much. And I appreciate also the work that you've been doing on the Transparency and Integrity Hub as well, while doing this as well. Thank you. I'll open it up out for discussion. My main point I'd like to raise is under the Local Government Act, section 104(3). It talks about sound contracting principles. So by law, the council must have sound contracting principles. And those 4 principles are: 1, value for money; 2, open and effective competition; and 3, the development of competitive local business and industry. And that's what I think this really ties into, that development of competitive local business at any time is important, but during COVID and seeing our economy recover is even more important. Fourthly, environmental protection. And the last principle is ethical behaviour and fair dealing. So I think bringing together your procurement team ticks off those 5 procurement, those sound contracting principles. Are there any other points? Councillor Manston.
I'd just like to add that I'm very supportive of these reforms in the procurement branch. We have a duty to maximise the expenditure that takes place locally, and it's not just benefits for local businesses and industry, it's also for the workers that they employ. And it means a lot to me to see a council that's so committed to the role that we play in the destiny of our people, and I commend these works.
Thank you, Councillor Manston. Thank you. Any other discussion? I know that Councillor John, you've been working closely in this area. We'll probably talk about that later, but thank you very much for your work behind the scenes as well.
Thank you.
Councillor Fickner?
What we need to know is that, through the growing pains, that the community needs to know that we are going through a transformation project, so the turnaround on some of these contracts isn't going to be as quick as it once was, and we need the patience of the community and their support to get behind this, because ultimately it's going to be a program that services the Ipswich community much better than before, but just acknowledging things are going to take a little bit longer, and you need to bear with council in that regard.
Yeah, I would agree, Councillor Fickner. I think the procurement team will be setting up some local panels, and that does take time to make sure that they're communicated and opened up and established for us as well. Yeah. I agree.
And as evidence today, we're working as hard as we can and under-resourced at the moment, but working towards full capacity. That will start to happen quicker for people, but just to make note that at the moment we are going through great reform, so things aren't going to happen as quickly as some people expect them to.
Thank you, Councillor Fickner. I note that Councillor Fickner did move the motion. Do I have someone who will second that? Councillor Johnick. Before we move to a vote, I'd actually like to move for a variation to keep the recommendation as it is, but add another 2 lines. I'd like to add to that that council, and I'll say it a bit slower for Vicky, and to put it for you to decide, that council publish data to the Transparency and Integrity Hub on the total value procured and the proportion of local spend for each quarter. So I'd like to move a variation to add that to the existing recommendation. Do have the support of the mover? Seconder, do you support that? Thank you. Any discussion to that recommendation? Councillor Fechner.
Yeah, I think that if there's a more important use to the hub than this, then I don't know about it, because I think that eyes on the Integrity Hub moving forward in July, this is something that we can, when published, we might look at it and say, well, we need to work on it, or it might be something that we can celebrate, and we can bring the community together by showcasing how we are spending locally and how we are supporting our locals. So I think that that's a wonderful amendment, and I support that inclusion in the hub.
Thank you. So that's added to the current recommendation. Thank you. All those in favour, please raise your hand. I see that everyone has raised their hand. It's unanimous. Thank you very much. We'll move on to item F3, which is the tender consideration plan, Polaris Data Centre consolidation. It's quite a long recommendation. It's in the paperwork. May I ask the relevant council officer to come to the lectern, please? Mr. White. Would you like to I'll say your name and...
Richard White, Manager of Procurement.
Thank you. Would you like to outline what you're asking the council to make a decision on today?
This is what we would almost consider actually a normal piece of business coming to council. So tender consideration plans are a requirement under the regulation where it is not advantageous for us to go back out to market to do quotes or tenders. They are usually these ABCDs. It's quite meaty because of the regulatory requirements around that. For this one, what we're asking for is it's a critical piece of ICT infrastructure. It's where our data racks sit. The movement of those data racks would not be advantageous for council at the moment to go back out and tender and quote. We would not be driving value, or really would kind of be wasting the market's time and our own time in going back for something that we already are getting best value for. If there's a change in policy, that's when we will likely go back to the market for a product like this. This is the outcome of a previous tender consideration plan and has been in place since... It's trying to clean out of my mind.
So you're asking us to not go out to market?
Essentially,
to
yes.
Keep the current... How long is the current contract for?
Another 3 years, and it's been going... That's what I was going back to
Previous
find the 2016, I believe, but we'll get a confirmation on that.
Appreciate that this was...
16, 17, so yes, it would have been since 2016.
Since 2016, so it's there for 4 years?
Yes. No, very sorry, 2017.
2017?
Contract names are a little bit tricky. They say 2016, 17.
Okay.
It was in the actual 17 year.
Financial year. And you're looking to extend it to another... Was there a 3-year option on the original contract?
No, that's why we're back
Okay.
to discuss with you.
It's a 3-year agreement for 3 racks of continuity of service.
Yes.
And the value for money argument to not go out, you've touched on it.
So essentially...
Why is it value for money for us to continue not to go out to market?
Yeah. So this is a local, this is Polaris at Springfield. We did a program to go back out. If we would go back out, it would be for another local-based data centre, which there isn't. So for us, that's where we start losing the value in going back to the market. These are NTT Data, which is previously Dell, so we entered into the agreement with in the first instance, are an identified supplier at that racking facility, and ICT have supported that we continue with best value at them.
And it'll be at 120,000 a year, so 360,000.
Yes.
Okay. Are there any other questions for Mr. White? Yes, Councillor Tully.
I've just got a query in relation to paragraph A, and I might indicate that the next item has got a paragraph A about resolve to prepare a tender consideration plan, which appears to have already occurred.
Yes.
And then you've got paragraph B that we adopted. It would seem that the timing of this would be that the initial thing would be paragraph A. I'm just curious why that's there when it's already done.
I actually would have to seek clarification on that. This is the phrasing of or presentation that is attached for tender consideration plans.
Yes.
I actually was thinking that walking in, to be frank, Councillor
I
Tully.
note the third item, the third TCP, doesn't have the equivalent of paragraph A. It just starts with the equivalent of paragraph B. It just seems a little odd when it's already done that we resolve to do it when it's already done.
Yeah, and in the regulation, it's actually worded resolves to prepare and adopt in one phrase. So I think it's I can go back and have a discussion with Chief Solicitor and.
Or I can speak to the CEO.
It might be simpler if we just combined A and B and that it, to be prepare and adopt. I'd be comfortable with that. It just reads a little bit oddly, Mayor.
As Mr White said, the regulation says prepare and adopt.
Yeah.
So the whole idea is it's prepared and adopts. There can be times when at one meeting you prepare, and then I think we have done that. You prepare and then the next meeting you adopt, but on many occasions you prepare and adopt at the same time. There's no reason why you couldn't wrap them together. It's also competent to leave it as it stands.
And I'll just, a point of order for myself, I didn't ask for someone to move or second this before we proceed any further, especially if we're doing a variation. May I ask for someone to move the recommendations in this report? Councillor Johnnick, thank you very much. And may I have someone to second that? So, Councillor Doyle, thank you. Okay, sorry, now we'll proceed, especially if you're looking at varying it. Did you wish to propose?
Well, I'll just propose that I note there's two different paragraphs A and B, but I'll move that, that paragraph A be deleted and that B, C and D be renumbered A, B and C, and that the wording of the new paragraph A be that Council resolve to prepare and adopt and follow that wording, and then in accordance with sections 231A and 230 in brackets 1A and B of the Local Government Act.
Okay. I'll just reference
Local Government Regulation, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Councillor. CEO, you any
Well, they're the same
views on-
words. If you actually look at it, it's just a truncation of the two, part A and B, so it's competent. It's a competent motion.
Yep. So I think you're asking for a variation.
Yes.
So, Councillor Johnnick, are you happy to go with that variation? And Councillor Doyle, are you happy with that? Okay, thank you. Any other questions of Mr White? No, thank you very much, Mr White.
Back so.
Open this up for discussion. Yes, Councillor.
Yeah, just rounding out and closing it off with clarity, we are getting a pretty good deal on this, and it endorses the local procurement model. So I don't think that any of us should have any qualms with taking on those recommendations, and look forward to possibly continuing this relationship even further than the 3 years after.
Depends on value for money.
Correct.
Thank you, Councillor Fickman. No, Councillor, okay, take it to a vote. All those in favour of this recommendation? Everyone has their hand up. It's unanimous. Thank you very much. We'll now move on to item F4, which is the tender consideration plan for pathway software licensing, maintenance and support. May I please have a mover for this recommendation, for this report? Councillor Fickner. May I have a seconder? Councillor Kunzelman, thank you very much. May I have Mr White, I guess, again? In summary, what decision are you after Council to make? What are you putting forward?
I'll backtrack just a little bit as well to say the three that we're looking at today really should have been to Council in May, and I apologise for that. I think that was discussed in short by the General Manager previously in the high-level discussion at the beginning. This is a failure of process that we bring it to you this late, while the decisions, personally, I believe are sound. That's why we're presenting them. Again, this is why we're presenting them at this late date. So for this one in particular, it's a tender consideration plan for continued engagement and use of the pathway software licensing, maintenance and support. It is the... I have to go through this. So we've had this since 2001, Pathways. It's our central system for the delivery of a lot of our key council systems, our rating, our I've got it all here on a list. One moment.
It's a property and rating system, so it contains all our property data and of all the properties throughout the city. It's the core local government suite around which more generic business operations can run, but it's one of the 2 or 3 leading local government property and rating suites that are available on the market at the moment.
Thank you. I found the long list, but
Thank you, Sue.
covered in TCP.
So you're looking at option 2 for 3 years?
Yes, at the moment. So, as you're probably well aware, currently we are looking at the systems that we use within council and the future of how we manage our systems within council. That project will take time. A product like this that's fully embedded and utilised across council for a number of systems, we can't turn on a dime because of its embedded nature. If we continue to use it out of the outcome of that project, or if we have to move to a different product as an outcome of that, it would take time for us to disentangle ourselves from that system. So the request would be for 3 years, and we do get a better rate at the 3 years. And that'll allow us to finalise that project and come to an outcome.
And I note that the option 2 for 3 years is a total of 1.118
That's correct.
million ex GST, but you're looking at better solutions, part of the platforms of the future.
That's correct. So that project will determine whether we continue or move to a different solution. If we continue, we're fine. We'll keep utilising. We'll come back in 3 years' time. With another tender consideration plan likely. If we choose to move away, that gives us time to disentangle ourselves.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. White? No, thank you very much.
Okay.
I'll now open it up for discussion.
I'll
Yes,
move a
Councillor
similar variation to
Yes.
the previous
You
one
might.
to combine A and B, and I think Vicky might be able to get the wording more easily than I can remember it.
So a variation, Councillor Fechner as the mover, you're okay with it? Councillor Kunzelmann as the seconder?
Yeah.
You're okay with it? Thank you. Give Vicky the opportunity to change that. We'll move to a vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. It's unanimous. Thank you very much. We'll move on to item F5, which is the tender consideration plan for the interestingly named iFerret maintenance. May I have a mover for the tender consideration plan for iFerret? Councillor Fechner, thank you very much. May I have a seconder? Councillor Kunzelmann, thank you very much. May I have the council officer to discuss F5, please?
Apologies, Mayor, and this may be a point of order. We have some legal advice that indicates that we should retain the separate recommendations in relation to A and B.
Right.
That we have our Deputy General Counsel here in the room, and we've quickly conferred. So just given the wording of the regulation that it does require us at 231A to have council decide by resolution to prepare. The CEO has pointed out that B is then to prepare and adopt the plan, but it is the resolution to prepare, which the legal advice is should stand alone really as a recommendation for council to resolve. And then theoretically, we prepare and present and council adopts the plan.
Okay. CEO, may I ask you for your advice on this, please?
I would probably just if the meeting is of a mind to adopt that advice, I would just resubmit the motion to the to the floor, and we'll just note that.
So, Councillor, would you like for the Deputy General Counsel to come for a
I
question?
think the appropriate procedure would be recommit the motion.
Yeah, recommit.
Yes, but I'm just...
And vote separately, procedurally to recommit the motion, which opens it up again because the meeting hasn't been closed.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll recommit. Thank you very much. Ms.
Apologies.
Cooper.
Apologies for not providing that more clearly sooner.
So we'll recommit the motion of F3 for the Polaris data centres. Was that correct?
As per the recommendation? Yep.
May I ask the Deputy Legal Counsel to come to the lectern to explain the legal advice, please? So this is for F3, the Polaris Data Centre. May I please say your name and your position, please?
My name's Alison Ferris MacDonald. I'm Deputy General Counsel here at Ipswich City Council. Section 231A requires the Council by resolution to prepare a quote or tender consideration plan, and then Section 231B deals separately with the adoption of the plan. So it's considered that those require two separate resolutions, being two separate steps that can't really be combined into one.
Does it say it can't be combined into one?
It doesn't say, it's implied by the drafting of the provision.
Right. I'm not allowed. Councillor Tully, are you comfortable with that, or you go back to the original?
This problem would be avoided in the future if step one occurred at an earlier meeting.
Yes. I think that's been
Yes, and it's just an
I think that's been
unusual
discussed
situation.
that there's...
It reads strangely as part of the recommendation, A and B separately.
Okay. Thank you very much, Deputy General Counsel. Thank you. So I'll recommit motion F3 as per the original recommendation.
You need a mover, a second?
And I think the original, I'll go back to see if the original mover and seconders will
Yeah.
be fine. I think Councillor Johnick was the mover and Councillor Doyle with the second. May I have a mover for F3 to go back to the original recommendation? Yeah, Councillor Johnick, thank you very much. And a second.
Just a point of order. I think the recommittal motion needs to be put, and then we deal again substantively.
Okay, you do a recommittal?
F3, yeah.
My apologies, the first time I've been doing a recommittal.
First
so
one I've ever done as well. In 22 years.
So 22 years the first time.
One day the best one we ever did of that nature.
Councillor Tully, you actually caused this. If I called, you were the one that asked for the variation.
Well, the CEO agreed with me.
40 years. 40 years of
Must have been right.
Excuse me, through the chair, through myself, Councillor Tully. 40 years of local government experience, and this is where you've led us. So the process will be to ask for someone to recommit F3. May I have someone who would please move that? Deputy Mayor, thank you. May I have someone to second that? Councillor Madsen, thank you very much. All those in favour? Raise your hand. And it's unanimous. Thank you very much. Now we'll go to the actual voting of F3 to the recommendations as they were set in our reports. May I have someone to please move them? Councillor Fechner, thank you very much. Someone to second them. Councillor Kunzelman, thank you very much. Any discussion? Thank you. We'll go straight to a vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. And it's unanimous. Thank you very much. We now move on to F3, and we're now going to do a motion to recommit F4, the tender consideration plan for Pathway Software licensing, maintenance and support. I ask for someone to move to recommit this motion. Thank you, Councillor Madsen. May I ask someone to second it? Councillor Milligan, thank you very much. I now open up for any discussion. There being no discussion, I'll ask for a vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. I see that's unanimous. Thank you very much. Now we'll move on to the actual recommendation as it was originally put. All those, may I have someone to move the motion? Councillor Fechner, thank you very much. May I have a seconder? Councillor Kunzelman, thank you. Open for discussion. There being no discussion, I'll move straight to a vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. I note that it's unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you. Now we'll move on to F5, IFER maintenance, and that's the TCP for that. And I note that before we break for F3 and 4 that Councillor Fechner had moved it and Councillor Kunzelman had seconded this motion. So thank you very much.
We'll have to amend this one as well.
We have to amend this one.
Yes, it's not got the A.
It's not got the A.
After looking at it so thoroughly now.
Okay.
We'll have to
Okay.
amend that on the floor with
Okay, we'll do that as an amendment on the floor. So, Mr. White, in conclusion, you're looking at us to sole source again.
sole source again, this time for our iFerret maintenance.
Please tell us what iFerret does.
So iFerret supports particularly our internal audit and legal branches, as well as other officers around council that need to be able to do really wide searches of databases and different council systems. So the nature of and why we're looking at how we structure our systems within council is there's a number of different systems, Pathways, Oracle, Outlook and different databases. Old and new, we have some archived ones as well that set up on servers that we. So this product, what it does is you can type in the matter you're looking for, and it will do a full search of all those systems in one go. Particularly useful and required for responding to requests for information that we're legislatively bound to do fulsome responses for. So this ensures that we are looking at everything, legal as well. We don't want to have missing pieces when we're responding, and internal audit as well when they're trying to do their job. So it supports all those different activities.
Sounds like, Mr. White, it would have been a piece of software that was used a lot the last few years.
Mm-hmm.
I see in the papers that it's $90,000 over 3 years, ex-GST.
That's correct.
Sole source. From a value for money perspective, what have you done to see if sole source is the best idea?
So this was done originally it was done as a market trial, so we actually trialled a number of different products. We went with this one and are getting excellent results, so it's fully supported by the internal customers to continue using. And market scan suggests that $30,000 per annum is at about appropriate cost or value that we should be looking at for this. So confirm that we're still retaining value for money.
Thank you. Do you have any questions of Mr. White? No, thank you very much, Mr. White. I appreciate that. Before we proceed for any discussion, it sounds like we need to add something, so I'll do a variation to this. So I think we're adding, and correct me if I'm wrong, CEO, but
To prepare.
that resolve to that the council resolved to prepare a tender consideration plan for iFerret maintenance in accordance with section 231A of the Local Government Regulation 2012, and that would be recommendation A, and the current A, B, C, D would be renamed B, C, D, E. Would that be correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So, Councillor Fechner, are you happy to vary that motion?
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kunzma, are you okay with that?
Yes.
Thank you very much. I'll now open this up for discussion. There being no discussion, I'll move straight to a vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. I'm going to look around the room. It's unanimous. Thank you very much. Let's move on to F6. F6 is contracts extended under Local Government Regulation 2012, Section 235, May 2020. This particular report is recommending that Council note the extension of 3 contracts under Section 235C of the Local Government Regulation 2012. Commercial cleaning, the plant hire services and plant dry hire, and then plant services, wet services. May I please have someone to move this motion? Thank you, Councillor Milligan. Anyone to second that? Councillor Fechner, thank you very much. Mr. White. May you please explain what Section 235C of the regulations are and why we're doing this today?
So this is an outcome of our, symptomatic I could say, of our system that we're currently in and a lack of scheduling and preparation. So what this 235C allows us to extend an agreement or enter into an agreement. I'm sure Alison's watching my wording there, but where there's an emergency situation. Usually this is more used for situations where cyclone has come through or a flood and we're needing to go straight out and grab people to do work within. but it's not bound to that. In this case, if these services were to cease an operation within council without contract, we would be unable to do our business. So we had to, as an emergency, extend these agreements. Why we had to extend them, again, is two cases. There's one that it's under tender, it's at final stages at the moment, but probably started a month too late, and we will bring the outcome of that tender to council for commercial cleaning, for dry hire in the July meeting. So we had to extend this as an emergency to provide us time to seek that endorsement from council. The other two, they're only preliminary in their preparation for tender. We would not have had anything in place for our wet hire and our cleaning services, which are both significant contracts for council, and so we've had to ask for these extensions.
Okay.
This report is to provide you information on those, because all three matters should come to council, and they will come to council when new agreements are in place.
Okay. Do you mind explaining the difference between dry hire and wet hire?
Yeah.
Wet hire and dry.
Yep. So dry hire is where you hire just the machinery. This may be down to a line cutter and up to a backhoe or a large piece of machinery. Wet hire is when you hire the piece of machinery and it comes with an operator. I do not know why it's wet and dry. They're usually sweaty when they're using them, I guess.
That's right.
Sure.
Okay, thank you, Mr. White. These are significant contracts, Mr. White, and I can see the commercial cleaning contract is a $6.5 million contract. The dry hire is a $1.5 million contract, and the wet services is a $13 million contract, so quite significant contracts. I guess I'll go through one by one. With the commercial cleaning contract, why is this council being called to enact these emergency provisions? Can you explain to me what has happened in the organisation for this to occur?
So over the last 9 months, as we've been discussing, there's been significant change within the procurement branch. This is a responsibility of procurement to administer these contracts. We lack a forward schedule of works. We do have a contract management system through Oracle. However, it is not a scheduling tool, and it doesn't provide us what we need to do scheduling. So essentially, the short of it, they did not commence these with sufficient scheduled time to present them for you to consider prior to the consultation of these agreements. Okay. We also miss a contract management framework that is applied across council. Contract management framework would provide accountability on the administration tasks and ensure that they happen in a timely way. So both those two things being absent, these lapsed,
Okay.
Which is something that needs to be amended and fixed.
Okay. So each of these contracts would have a contract manager, and they obviously quickly haven't done their position, their job or their role, or you're saying that the system in council didn't allow them to do their job?
It didn't support them to do their job.
Okay.
Also, the resourcing, these sort of, when they should have been in full swing, we were going through significant change within the branch. And I know that doesn't mean you stop your business as usual, and it's not an excuse for stopping your business as usual. But I would say that during that significant change, a few balls were dropped. And in this case, these 3 balls.
Significant balls.
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. White?
Just had a question.
Yeah, Councillor Kunzman.
I just wondered why there's a variation in the extension time. 2 of them are 6 and 1 of them are 3 months.
Yep. So the 3-month one is where we are at the end of that agreement. We are at the end of the tender process for that. We'll only need the 3 months so that we can come to you, and I expect July. I'm very hopeful that we have that outcome with you. I know the evaluation's been completed, so as you'd be aware, there's a lot of moving balls to getting it onto your schedule and pre-briefed, and so I have to get those all lined up for the July meeting.
Okay.
And the other ones that provide fulsome time to conduct it really thorough, because
Just
these,
saying you're further advanced in the tendering process for that particular one.
that one, yes. Yeah, that actually is, it's all complete and evaluated. We've just got to raise the report.
Thank you, I understand.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. White.
Thank you.
I'll open this up for discussion. I guess from my perspective, as again, the importance of procurement to providing services, it is very disappointing that that this is happening. That you can say the ball's been dropped. It's a core function of this council to make sure that we are on top of, not just on top of our procurement, but exceeding and providing the best goods and services. The fact that this meeting has been called today to address these things is disappointing. In previous discussions with the General Manager and the Manager of Procurement, they've given these timeframes, which this council will hold you to. Those 3 and 6 month timeframes will hold you to, and I think that's what the community would expect us to do as well. Are there any other discussion points?
Yes, to be fair, I mean, they are going through massive amounts of transformation, so I'm not going to sit here and demand more of an under-resourced department to try and deliver to us a bit quicker. I know that there is mounting community expectation to do this, but I know and understand that when you set a bomb off inside an organisation, essentially, you're going to blow out timelines in certain ways, and I appreciate that they're coming to us now and asking for us to move these in an emergency situation, but I've got full faith that this isn't going to last for very long, and that we'll move forward from this quite quickly. So, I just want to say that I truly do acknowledge like how difficult it must be to come to us to ask for these things, these emergency extensions, and that I don't believe that this is going to be a common occurrence moving forward.
I think maybe I didn't communicate properly, Councillor Fechner. I guess what I'd like to highlight is the poor governance of the previous council, that there was no contract management framework, no register of contracts, no forward schedule of procurement, basic things that every council should have. And I acknowledge that the General Manager and the Manager of Procurement have inherited that. In our pre-briefings, I have asked them if this is do they have enough time and resources, and they've assured me that this is the amount of time and the resources that they have the resources to do it.
I wonder how often in the past this actually happened, like how, in these situations, or was procurement just dealing with it in-house? And these...
What we call...
Yeah, that's probably a question for they may not be able to speak to that, seeing as it is a question of the historic...
I think the council officers have spoken, I guess, about the fact that I guess this is why there's the business transformation project for procurement, that there were massive issues and that needed to be fixed. More than happy to call up a council officer if you want to.
No, that's okay. I'll leave it there. And just as a general comment, I think that if people are looking at our council and wondering what we're doing, well, we're pulling it into line and trying to approach our business within the administrative body as best practice moving forward. That's underpinned by the fact that it is a transformation program.
No,
project.
I appreciate the work that Ms Cooper and Mr White have done in bringing this forward and untangling the hundreds and hundreds of over 500 contracts to get to here. CEO, you've been the CEO of a number of councils. Are these emergency provisions used very often?
Not really.
Okay.
But from time to time, but not normally in a routine situation like that. But there is, I guess, some evidence to show that perhaps historically some of these things may well have been handled in this organisation in a different way that may not necessarily have been following proper legislative procedures.
Operating outside of that delegation.
Yeah.
With me.
Okay.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Any further? In that case, I'll move to the vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. It's unanimous. Thank you very much. Let's go on to F7, which is a contract extension for safe city monitoring. May I have someone to move this recommendation, this report, sorry? Councillor Fechner, someone to second? Councillor Kunzelmann, thank you very much. The recommendation here is that the Chief Executive Officer be authorised to administer a contract extension for the Safe City Monitoring contract and to do any other acts necessary to implement the Council's decision in accordance with Section 13(3)(c) of the Local Government Act. And noting that the incumbent contractor is Wilson Security. Thank you. May I have the relevant council officer to the lectern? Thank you. I understand, Mr. White, the council's requesting to consider and endorse an extension of this contract for a 3-month extension from the 30th of June to the 30th of September. Could you please outline?
Similar to the previous 3, however, this one closes on the 30th of June. So the previous 3 ended on the 31st of May. We do have time to at least have this one presented to you. Again, this one is actually closed for finalised evaluation and will come to council in a month's time, but that's we can't not have these services. Really, I could ask for a single month extension for this, but it's more appropriate to ask for 3 and then to assist if we have to change services and wind up or anything like that. So this is Safe City Monitoring, so they man the camera room and things like that within the Safe City program, and they also provide the security that we see around. So again, this is probably about three weeks too late to market, and the outcome of that is we didn't have time to get the final outcome to council before the end of the contract.
So it's a 5-year contract?
Yes, that's 3 plus
3
1.
months.
Yep. So entered into about the same time as the last 3 agreements again. It was a busy time.
And this extension will cost around
120,000
ex GST?
Yes, I think it's 120,000 a month.
135,000.
135. So around $400,000.
Any other questions for Mr. White?
Is that month to month comparable to what we've been previously paying in the last 3 years?
Yes, it's just an extension of that agreement, so in terms, and we'll see the outcome, and I'll present the outcome of the latest tender for this, so you can see what we've done with an evaluation of this.
Thank you, Councillor.
There's been no variation to any of the terms.
I would have to check on that over the 5-year period. I would have to check.
Are there any terms in particular, Councillor Doyle, that you're...
Well, obviously the amount, but that's been confirmed that hasn't changed. I was just wondering if there are any other material changes that we should be aware of.
I take that on notice. To be frank, I'm not aware of that, of a review of the contract itself.
Right.
I need to go back and check with the contract administrator.
Okay, given that we're going month,
Okay.
we probably can get a report on that later.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? No, thank you very much, Mr. White.
I think
Open
the
this.
rec
So
should quote the months. It hasn't got the months in it. It just says extension. It should say extension for 3 months.
okay.
Just to clarify. Just pick that up.
Okay. I have a variation to put forward. The recommendation currently states that just to administer a contract extension. If it's okay with you, Councillor Fechner and Kunzelmann, if we could add in there that's a contract extension for 3 months.
Yep.
In that, Councillor Fechner, you're okay with that? Councillor Kunzelmann? You're okay with that?
Yep.
So after extension, put the word for 3 months.
Yep.
Okay. So any discussion? I'll take it to a vote. Those in favour, please raise your hand. That's unanimous. Thank you very much. F8 is contract extension, supply of parking machines and associated systems. The recommendation is that the CEO is authorised to administer a final 12-month contract extension for the parking machines and communication and management systems contract to do any other acts necessary to implement council's decision in accordance with section 13(3)(c) of the Local Government Act. May I have someone to move this recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Doyle. Someone to second it? Councillor Fechner, thank you very much. I see that we're looking at an estimated expenditure for a final year. It's $240,000 for meter operations, hosting and communications, an additional $45,000 for credit card processing fees, for a total estimated cost of $285,000. The total cost of this arrangement over the entire period is expected to be $1.23 million, so quite a large expenditure. Mr. White.
To be fair, this type of report really doesn't often come to council. Usually when we phrase the recommendations of an agreement like this, we would say that the CEO has the power to enact the extensions as well as the agreement. So in truth, you endorse up to the full 5 years of a 3+1+1. However, on the wording of this recommendation, it stated clearly that we would return to council in full each time we extended the contract. Much like our ICT, this is a fully embedded system. So these are the parking meters that are in the city centre. To stop utilising them as a proprietary, the sole supplier of this in Australia, this company, we would need to have a strategy and reason why we were to walk away from them. Now that could happen, but at the moment we've got still a year to run on this 5-year agreement. So it's better to, I say 5, for this agreement. So in this case, we propose that it's best value for money and administratively the best approach to extend again.
Any questions? Thank you, Mr. White. I'll open up for discussion, noting that at the General Purpose Committee meeting on the 23rd, we'll be proposing a new parking pricing strategy. So I'm very interested, I guess, CEO, how this fits in with extending this contract for 12 months, noting that will it fit in with our new parking pricing strategy?
It would be consistent with our new parking pricing strategy. Obviously, if you wanted to move forward and do more advanced options and things like that, you might consider either modifying the machines, or you may consider replacing the machines with a new type of machine. These, I understand, are 9 years old. You normally have a design life of about 10 years for these things. Typically, councils will squeeze a little bit more out of them, so they might buy them, depreciate them over 10 years, and get 12 or 13 years out of them. But at this stage, we're only going for a year, so you're still buying in the ability to, if council decided to be more aggressive on its plans, and it could tender for a new solution over the coming year, and have that in place within 12 months.
Now, CEO, this would normally come to you if it wasn't for the fact the resolution originally said to come back to council. Would you be signing off on this for value for money for the council if this was coming for your decision?
Yes, essentially it becomes an embedded cost. It's like software maintenance. That when you buy the decision to buy the meters, you have to get the support, because they're essentially useless without it. They've got a little mobile phone within them. They fire back to their system, who then fires into our system. So without this, the meters are effectively useless. There is no choice. It's the same, as I said, as for a couple of the things that we put in here. For example, pathway. If you don't maintain the system, then you might as well throw the system out and go to market to replace it.
Thank you. There's no other discussion or questions. I'll move to vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. I can see it's unanimous. Thank you very much. We'll move on to F9, which is the proposed repeal of sale for overdue rates and charges. This is something that does not come to council very often, and I also note that there are a number of confidential documents in this that the public would not have seen. I have had feedback from the public in the past when we've had confidential documents, and also if we do go into closed session, people want to know why. So these confidential documents are a history of interactions with the owners of the property, so that will be breaching privacy laws if we were to share this document. And later, if we do go into closed session, that will be the reason why, because we'll be going into personal circumstances of residents. Now, I'll ask for someone to move this report. Councillor Fechner. Now, someone to second it. Councillor Doyle. Thank you very much. I think, judging on the report that we have, we'll probably have to move pretty quickly into closed session. So may I ask for someone to move that we move into closed session? Councillor Madsen, and Councillor Kunzelman has seconded it. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Thank you, it's unanimous. Thank you. We will now go into closed session because we are going to discuss, I guess, the history of interactions with these particular properties. Thank you. Can you tell me when we're not recorded anymore?
You're live again now.
Thank you very much. Welcome back. To start off with, I'm going to ask for a variation of the motion that has been moved and seconded. I'm asking for a variation to remove recommendation D, as that has now been paid in full. May I have permission from the mover, Councillor Fechner?
Yes,
You
no
agree?
worries.
And Councillor Doyle, as a seconder, you agree? Thank you. In that case, we'll be going straight to recommending to repeal A, B and C. So we'll go on to that. Then we'll go straight to a vote. Before we go to a vote, may I leave this open for discussion for anyone to discuss?
Through the Mayor, I would just like to make a couple of comments. Firstly, sound and sustainable financial management decisions are obviously at the core of the roles and responsibilities of local councils. That's without doubt. Effective, efficient and economical management of public resources, our ratepayers' money, is an obligation I know we all take very seriously, and it's critical to the long-term sustainability of Ipswich City Council. It's my view, though, that these obligations must be balanced with our other obligations in the community, our role in the community, and that is, the well-being of our residents, in particular the disadvantaged and the vulnerable. Given our community and wider Australia are dealing with an exceptional circumstance, that is COVID-19 pandemic, I don't think it's in the public interest to move forward, that we would have moved forward in this situation to continue with the sale of the properties. And I certainly don't believe there was any it was going to improve the financial management position of council. I'd also just like to point out, I would like to firstly acknowledge the council staff members that have worked very closely with the owners of these properties, members of our community suffering significant hardship. So our staff must be acknowledged for going above and beyond to support these residents. I also had some dealings with the residents, and it's not a situation any council wants to find itself in. But we do end on a positive note, and that is, with regard to repealing properties A, B and C, we've either received payment or, evidence of intention to pay. So I think we've had a good outcome today.
Well said, Councillor Doyle. Any other comments or discussion? I'd also like to thank council staff, and you can see through the call history they have been working with these residents for many years to help them pay their rates, rather than go to the having to sell the homes to pay the rates. It's not something that anyone wants to do, especially in times like this. So thank you to your team, Jeff and Paul, for that. You can see in the paperwork here the amount of hours that has happened, and also thank you to Councillor Doyle. I know you were out actually visiting some of the impacted residents here, and thank you for your advocacy and your support to them and balancing your role as for the community and financial sustainability. Since we already have a mover and a second, I'll go to a vote to repeal these. All those in favour, please raise your hand. I note that it's unanimous. Oh, sorry, I'll just check. Councillor Kunzel?
Councillor Kunzel.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, thank you. It's unanimous. Thank you very much. Go to F10. So, change of time of council ordinary meeting scheduled for the 30th of June. This report is recommending that the ordinary council meeting scheduled to commence at 9 o'clock on Tuesday the 30th of June be rescheduled to commence out at 12:30 on Tuesday. So just later on that day. May I have someone to move that? Councillor Doyle, someone to second that? Councillor Fechner, thank you very much. I'll open this up for discussion. The reason why it's being moved is that we're having our bringing down our very first budget for this council at I think 9:30, is it? 9:30 on that morning, so we're having our ordinary council meeting. Traditionally, you would announce a budget and the media do like to have some time to go through it and so on, so we'll fit in with their schedules and we'll have our ordinary council meeting at 12:30 as proposed. Any other discussion? In that case, I'm going straight to a vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Once it's unanimous, thank you very much. We're up to the last item, and I note the conflict of interest that Councillor Johnnick. Thank you very much for being so forthcoming straight away, also Councillor Johnnick, in this conflict of interest. Thank you. I can confirm that Councillor Johnnick is no longer in the chambers. I'll please have someone move this report. Councillor Doyle, and someone to second. Councillor Fechner, thank you very much. I also note that there's a confidential document in this paper. Actually, both briefing papers on this are confidential. There's a confidential briefing note and also a confidential final deed of settlement and variation. So at some stage during this proceedings, I would expect that it will go into a closed session, and that is to discuss a legal in confidence deed and settlement, which we'll probably have to do straight away. Just go into discussion here. That since June 2019, Councillor Amondis have engaged in without prejudice negotiations in a resolution of a dispute concerning waste disposal services, and a proposed deed of settlement and variation has been drafted and is presented to Council for authorisation. So I'll ask for someone to move that we go into a closed session. Councillor Doyle, thank you very much. A seconder? Councillor Fechner, thank you very much. All those in favour, please raise your hand. I notice that you were unanimous. Thank you. We are now in a closed session. I'll ask for confirmation that we're not being recorded.
Session's live.
Thank you very much and welcome back. We're back onto item F11, which is a Remondis deed of settlement and variation, which was moved by Councillor Doyle and seconded by Councillor Fechner. I now open it up for any discussion, not discussing anything that was confidentially discussed. I guess my only point is noting the date that this happened. These actions was December 17, so it was some time ago. And it does relate to the poor governance that existed in the previous council. In fact, this whole meeting has been in regards to basically the poor governance of the previous council, and that's another reason why the previous council was dismissed. And I guess to you, CEO, I expect that you would brief me on anything like this, as you have done with this, in regards to any other confidential matter. So thank you very much for all those involved. If there's nothing else, I'll move straight to the vote on this. All those in favour of this report, please raise your hand. I see that's unanimous. Thank you very much. There being no other business, I now close the meeting at 4:06 p.m. Thank you very much, and please make sure you sign the book if you haven't already.